2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I see the image on live choice.
No ideas?
أيوة.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
هلا عندي VPN.
And just take it. It's plugged in, yeah?
Now, can you hear me?
It's audio
1,
input
2,
2.
3.
Do you have plus?
What about now?
Plus 48. Phantom power. I need that on that mic.
What about now?
It's on input 2, just if that matters.
Okay. Now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Now?
Power.
What about now? Let's try that. Now? Hello?
Hello. ايه بيطلع لايف ولا بيطلع توفيق لايف ولا محمد بيطلع لايف؟
Test. Okay, they're not going to be saying a lot, so it's going to be fine. I'm going to have it on my other camera.
ما في شيء. ايوه. شو بدك؟ شو هو بالضبط؟ يا انت يعني يسوي برا ما يسوي واحد حرجع انا افوت جوا.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Right. Okay. Perfect.
Alhamdulillah.
صح. ايه بس بتاخذ لايك.
Yeah, Lujan. Sorry. How would I say that? Take a photo of me would be Tasawwur? Tasawwur?
يلا
Huh?
إلا ما نحضر الماتش.
This is F9, so the focus is pretty good. I don't need to worry a lot about the focus. It's F9, right? Focus is there, right? I know the other one will go red. I'll just have to eyeball it.
كمان رح تكون حلوة الماتشات اللي تبعت تيم السود.
أي استديو؟
Can you move the focus please?
This is the focus? Okay.
أيوة.
Oh, I see zebra. If I get zebra, I'm focused, right?
for the red.
بعدين ندخل جوا ننتظر انتهاء المؤتمر الصحفي بعدين ناخذ أحمد.
Just in the world.
Sorry.
لا أنا راح أخلص التوقيع وأدخل جوا ومحمد الأحمد راح يطلع على الكاميرا تبعي للجي ليش؟ لا أنا مش سامعني. ألو سامعني.
مش أول مرة بالتواصل.
مش من ناحية الحماس. هي بتكتب وحيد اشتريتها من بيتها.
والله. وين رح تعمل؟
ما بعرف جبت أنا الكاتيجوري اللي هي مش
هي
ألو.
أمريكان ولا
رقم إيه طبعا عندي رقم موجود. رقم القطري موجود. إيه موجود بارحة البوكينج بالليل مال محمد الأحمد عن الحصان. الساعة 12 بالضبط. 12. لا اثنين وخمسين 70 65 41 يلا تمام. ايوه لا حبيبي ولا حبيبي والله مطول
Appreciate.
Okay.
هي وضع.
ايوه مرحبا.
just adds to our
أيوة.
identity as an organization.
مهم.
In favor of having as many
نطلع الدي بعد انتهاء المؤتمر من جوا. ايوه
yeah بس majority بتشوف رسومهم عربية
اوكي.
أغلبهم بس كتير عندهم جوازات
لا لا لا
اي بس لازم تقول لي يعني بس لازم تقول لي يعني تحكم او لا يعني بس يعباش عنده بس يعباش عنده شيء
شو اسمه والله ما عرفت كيف صحتك؟ ايه انتم يلا
أو هلا والله بتعرف شيء عن شو صار
اوكي لا 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 هو هذا ناتشرال
والله مش
قطر is
ايه
to have an agreement
ما في كلمات
بس not official because they didn't make it official حتى Alexander Jax the prime minister
اوكي تمام تمام اوكي
هي هيك قال
حبيبي هلا هلا
انه والله يعني عرفت انه وين احترام
لأن هو ما بيعرف يغني عن حل الله
لا It went reported and then suddenly الشارع
ما بعرف أي شركة خاص they said in the end of 2023 Silicon Valley reactor capacity
Total Energies ما Total is a partner
توتال غير منه هذا الصديق إنه مش عارفين بعد إيش في بقلبه إلا the end of 2023
based on that they'll make the agreement عشان يعني
ما بعرف شو قصته أول مرة نحن عنا ما عندي فكرة بهيدا شو بصير بهيدا الأغريم بس شغلة جديدة بعرف المهم
Yeah, so just be aware.
really mediate
إيه بس ما قلت لك
I don't know. Well, I don't know. It depends. They said they were going to move us to the center of the staircase after they come in. So it depends on what they want to do. Yeah, I'm live. I'm live.
نطلب منك شغلة عليهم فيهم يكون قاعد على الطرف حتى ما يسكروا على الوجوه عشان طرف الطاولة لأنه اللي بيوقف شوي على الطرف رح يسكر الوجه لا مش عم بحكي على اللقاء أنا عم بحكي عن الصورة بس ايه هيك أحلى تفتح المجال أكثر مش عم بفهم ليش العالم بتفتح هون شو
يمكن لأنه they have to head to the stadium in the time شيء after this.
ليش ما فيك تفتح قنوة بلد؟
لا no as media. الوقفة طويلة عن بوابة الحاملة and they need everything as soon as possible.
الميديا أسرع؟
Yeah طبعا.
وين عملنا بالكلام؟
موجود على طول لما توصل عند البدع time zone you'll find it there. مكتوب media دي مي
شو أخبار؟ ما في حد يصلح أنت فيه؟ ما عرفت أنا زمان هون والله بالإنجلش كان جزيرة والله زمان وأنت بعدك بتطلع عليك بس راحوا الشعراء أوكي أحلى مين إيه معي هون بس أنا ما اللي خلى لك من بيروت نفس الشيء خلاني بعيد انت لك زمان انا من 98 كنت 94 انت عم تزعل مني كنت كبير عم يتصرف عندي كم بنات كمان جدا توم عمرهم طيب اذا ما مش مبسوطين ما بنبسط شو وين ما بخرج نحن هون بالميدل ايست جنوب انت غير انت بالنسبه لك يمكن
Jane, I'm down to like low battery on this.
بدي بقى ابعتهم لاولادي بس ما مين هلا شي ترجع بكره نفرض كلنا صار الفاينانشال كمان نحن مين لو كانوا مسكرين اي حدا بس وانا كمان والله العظيم انا كمان انت جاي معهم Right?
No, please.
Yeah,
Please. يا شباب. Please.
بس تسمح ما تسكر علينا الله يخليك.
لا وإدارة هديهم أنا. يا شباب أيوة شباب.
Lucian, do I have time to change the battery or no? Do I have time to change the battery or no? Yes?
That's true.
Papa. you push up your stick distance.
Oh yes.
Actually, what he said to me was Nasser, the president of PSP. I will send you the jersey. I said it's up to you.
Yeah, everybody. Thank you. Sorry.
حتى كاميرا من برا يخلي الترايبود بس نخلينا الترايبود تاعنا
Test. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Test. Test. 1, 2, 3. Test. One, two. Do you hear me? Can you hear me well? Is it fine?
Mic check. Mic check. Checking. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Сегодня у нас сразу два ярких события, значимых для отечественного судостроения и нашего ледокольного флота. Да, собственно говоря, для всей страны, потому что это решение двух очень важных комплексных задач. Причем не просто двух больших комплексных задач, а находящихся решаемых в рамках большого проекта. На новом универсальном атомном ледоколе «Урал» будет поднят государственный флаг России. Еще один мощный современный атомный ледокол «Якутия» готов к спуску на воду со стапелей Балтийского завода в Санкт-Петербурге. Я от души вас поздравляю всех с этим событием. Искренне благодарю наших корабелов, атомщиков, конструкторов, рабочих, инженеров, всех специалистов, которые участвуют в создании этих высокотехнологичных, уникальных, без всякого привлечения.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. في البداية أود الترحيب بصديقي وزميلي معالي الوزير توني بلينكن الذي زارنا يوم أمس، أولا للمشاركة في تشجيع منتخب الولايات المتحدة، ونهنئكم على هذا الأداء المبهر يوم أمس، ونتمنى لكم إن شاء الله حظا أوفر في المباريات القادمة، ونتطلع إلى تكون هذه البطولة في قطر عام 22 هي محطة لتجمع الشعوب ولتلاقي الثقافات ولتلاقي كافة الحضارات والاستمتاع بما توفره الأجواء هنا في الدوحة، وتجربة ضيافة الشعب القطري والمقيمين على أرض قطر. طبعا كانت لنا فرصة اليوم لإقامة الجولة الخامسة من الحوار الاستراتيجي القطري الأمريكي، والذي نعتبره منصة هامة في تعزيز العلاقات الثنائية بين بلدينا التي تتمتع بأسس قوية وصلبة وشراكة متعددة الأوجه، وتعتبر من أهم الشراكات الاستراتيجية لدولة قطر. طبعا الشراكة تمتد من الشراكة السياسية وفي مجال الدفاع والأمن وفي المجالات الاقتصادية والتنموية. كان اليوم لدينا فرصة لمناقشة قضايا متعددة، سواء كان على ما يخص القضايا الإقليمية وأيضا التحديات التي يواجهها العالم اليوم. كان على أجندة اجتماعاتنا مناقشة تطورات طبعا الاتفاق النووي الإيراني، وأيضا التطورات في الساحة العراقية ولبنان وليبيا، وأيضا القضية الفلسطينية التي تعتبر القضية المركزية لدينا. كما ناقشنا أيضا الجهود المشتركة في أفغانستان. دولة قطر والولايات المتحدة تتوافق في وجهات النظر حيال هذه القضايا، ونتطلع للعمل سويا ما بين فرق العمل التي ستستأنف المحادثات بين المؤسسات المعنية في الدولتين. كما أيضا كان هناك فرصة لمناقشة كيفية الاستجابة للتحديات العالمية بشكل مشترك، وخصوصا تحديات الطاقة والأمن الغذائي والتحديات التنموية الأخرى التي تواجه عالمنا اليوم. نتطلع في دولة قطر دائما لتعزيز الشراكة مع الولايات المتحدة، ونتطلع لأن يكون هناك دائما حوار مفتوح وعلاقة مبنية على الثقة المتبادلة وعلى الشفافية فيما بين الدولتين. وأود أن أثمن في هذه المرحلة التعاون الذي أبدته الولايات المتحدة بمؤسساتها المختلفة لدعم إقامة بطولة كأس العالم، ونشكركم على كافة الجهود التي قام فيها خصوصا المؤسسات الأمنية ومؤسسات الأمن الفضائي في الولايات المتحدة للدعم الذي قدمته لدولة قطر في إقامة هذه البطولة. وهذا جزء من التعاون الذي يمتد ما وراء الشراكات المتعددة بين الدولتين. نتمنى لكم حظا موفقا مع الوزير لمنتخبكم في كأس العالم، ونتمنى أن نراك مرة أخرى ويكون منتخبكم أيضا متأهلا. طبعا كموقف سياسي يجب أن نشجع فقط منتخب دولة قطر ونتمنى له التوفيق دائما، ولكن أيضا نتمنى التوفيق لمنتخبكم. شكرا.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And Mr. Minister Mohammed, thank you. Thank you for your wonderful hospitality. Thank you for the very good and detailed conversations that we just had as part of the Fifth Strategic Dialogue. I have to say that having proudly hosted the opening of the fourth U.S.-Qatar Strategic Dialogue in Washington last year, I can objectively concede that our hosts have outdone us when it comes to entertainment surrounding the dialogue. It was absolutely thrilling to watch Team USA play last night. Thrilling as an American, thrilling as a soccer fan or football fan. And our team played with so much heart and made our country proud. And we're anxious to see the rest of the tournament and the games that follow. Now, I know that neither of us notched the win that we wanted in our first match. I'm reminded of the wisdom of a great American philosopher, basketball coach, Greg Popovich, who once said, and I quote, "The measure of who we are is how we react to something that doesn't go our way," which is true for diplomacy as well as in sports. So we meet at what is a high point of the 5-decade-long diplomatic relationship between our countries on every issue that matters to our nations. Our collaboration, I think it's fair to say, is deeper, and our people are the better off for it. The security ties between us have never been stronger. Qatar hosts our largest military base in the region, which is an anchor for regional security and regional stability. In March, President Biden designated Qatar as a major non-NATO ally. Several months later, we began delivering F-15 aircraft to the Qatar Emirati Air Force, raising its defense capabilities, making our militaries more interoperable. We're partnering in the region and beyond to enhance stability, to reduce tensions, to end conflicts. Qatar has provided vital economic assistance to the Palestinian people. It's helped pay the salaries of security forces in Lebanon. It's brokered peace between Chad's transitional government and opposition groups. And Qatar consistently works to mend regional rifts, which is essential to addressing the common challenges that we face. We're also deepening economic ties, from civil aviation to renewable energy. Qatari and American businesses, innovators, are creating new opportunities for people in both of our countries. We welcome the Emir's commitment to ramp up Qatar's production of liquefied natural gas. That will bolster global energy security. It will help people around the world who are struggling to keep up with rising costs. And we recognize Qatar's efforts to curb emissions, like joining the Global Methane Pledge, and its investments in technologies to foster a clean energy transition in the years ahead. Where conflicts and deep instability persist, we are working to help people who are suffering as a result. When the Taliban forcibly took power in Afghanistan, Qatar played an indispensable role in helping the United States relocate tens of thousands of at-risk Afghans, aid workers, diplomats, and others. More Afghans came through Doha than any other place in the world. The work continues as Qatar continues to provide a transit point for Afghans who are on their way to starting new lives in the United States. We're profoundly grateful for the role that Qatar and Mohammed, you in particular, your team, have played in helping secure the release of U.S. citizen Mark Frericks after more than 2.5 years of captivity in Afghanistan. The strategic dialogue that we launched today will build on this robust cooperation in all of these areas, but also many others, including cultural and educational cooperation, counterterrorism, visa and consular issues, labor issues, human trafficking, all of which we've worked on in the run-up to this historic sporting event. We congratulate Qatar on hosting the first World Cup in the Middle East. The Emir's statement that all are welcome here for the World Cup is an important message for an event that brings together people from all walks of life, nations, faiths, sexual orientations, races, and other forms of diversity. Now it's important to make that inclusivity a reality. We also applaud the historic step of opening direct flights between Tel Aviv and Doha for the duration of the World Cup, which shows the promise of expanding people-to-people ties and economic ties between countries. Now, a massive amount of work goes into hosting an event like this. We know that without workers, including many migrant workers, this World Cup simply would not have been possible. Qatar's made meaningful strides in recent years to improve its labor laws, to expand worker rights. The United States has been and will continue to be a consistent partner in those efforts. Of course, real work remains on these issues, and the United States will continue to work with Qatar on strengthening labor rights and human rights more broadly, long after the World Cup is over. Today, we signed a letter of intent to expand our cooperation on promoting accessibility, combating human trafficking, improving labor practices. These efforts align with President Biden's commitment to make human rights a pillar of our foreign policy and core to our values and our interests. Before last night's game, I had a chance to watch some young players, teenagers from the United States, from Qatar, from Canada and Mexico, doing drills on a pitch. As a lifelong soccer fan, and it's charitable to say a mediocre player, it reminded me of one of the very best things about this sport. No matter where you go, every corner of the world, and this has been my experience the last 2 years, you find people who love the game. They love to play it, they love to watch it, they love to argue about it, they love rooting and supporting a team with all of the joy and occasional heartbreak that brings. And in a world where we're so often on a daily basis reminded of what makes us different, what divides us, soccer is a powerful unifying force, a language, a common language that pretty much the entire world speaks. So I wish all of the countries represented here a successful tournament, and go Team USA. Thank you.
شكرا أصحاب السعادة. بعد إذنكم ننتقل إلى أسئلة الصحفيين ونبدأ مع الزميلة أمينة مبارك.
Go ahead, please.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أمين عبدة من تلفزيون قطر. سؤال موجه لسعادة الوزير الأمريكي. سعادة الوزير، يعني مع الأخذ بعين الاعتبار التنافسات والصراعات على المستوى الدولي من بينها الحرب الروسية الأوكرانية وأيضا إثارة مسألة التواجد الاستراتيجي الأمريكي في منطقة الشرق الأوسط، كيف يمكن أن يؤثر ذلك على الشراكة القطرية الأمريكية في المرحلة المقبلة؟ شكرا.
Well, thank you. I think what you're seeing evidenced here today throughout all of the strategic dialogues that we've done, the new one that we're launching, is that we have a partnership that is both bilateral, it's regional, and increasingly it's global. And we've seen that just in recent months and recent years in a whole variety of places. The cooperation that I mentioned on Afghanistan, for which the United States is genuinely grateful. Of course, the long-time hosting of U.S. forces here in Qatar, the status that Qatar has as a major non-NATO ally that President Biden designated just a few months ago. The work that Qatar is doing, and doing in some cases in cooperation with us, to mend regional rifts. The work that Qatar is doing to support the Palestinian people, which is vital and important. The principled stand that Qatar has taken on Ukraine, and of course, helping to provide for the world's energy needs. In these and so many other areas, we're working ever more closely together, and Qatar is having a very, very significant impact. There's something else that we talked about today that I think is very important, and that is the work that we're doing, and that I hope that we coordinate even more together on providing support and humanitarian assistance to people who need it. This is something that Qatar has been a leader in, and the needs around the world are great. We see this in terms of food insecurity, where we're working together. We see it in terms of energy, of course, global health. One of the efforts that we're going to be taking through the strategic dialogue is having a working group together to better coordinate and focus our joint efforts on providing this kind of assistance to countries that are in need. It is usually important that even as we're dealing every day with the consequences of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, and we have to do that, not only for the sake of the people of Ukraine, but because Russia's committed a terrible aggression as well against the very principles of the United Nations Charter that are vital in trying to keep peace and security and stability around the world. Even as we're doing that, we're also determined to address the many challenges that people around the world face, some of which have been exacerbated by the Russian aggression. But in all of these efforts, our countries are working closely together, and that cooperation is deepening.
شكرا سعادة الوزير. الزميلة سارة رشيد من قناة الجزيرة.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السؤال الأول لوزير الخارجية الأمريكي: بعد النجاح الأمني في تنظيم كأس العالم هنا في الدوحة بالتعاون مع دولة قطر، كيف سيساهم توقيع خطاب النوايا إيجابيا، وكيف ستكون آلية العمل المشترك بين البلدين؟ سؤالي الثاني لسيد نائب رئيس مجلس الوزراء القطري: من خلال متابعتكم مؤخرا للهجمة الإعلامية على دولة قطر، هل قلت هذه الهجمة بعد بداية بطولة كأس العالم؟ وأحب أيضا أن أعرف رأي وزير الخارجية الأمريكي في هذا الموضوع.
Thank you. I think what's most important to highlight is this. Our countries have been working closely together, collaborating, dealing with, as I said, both issues between us, regional issues, global issues, well before the World Cup. We continue that collaboration during the World Cup. We're going to pursue it after the World Cup is over, and in fact the baton is passed to the United States, Mexico, and Canada for 2026. And the strategic dialogue is at the heart of that. That's why it was so important for us to launch the latest round, which we did today. But in launching the strategic dialogue, that starts a whole process where we have working groups between our countries that, in a whole variety of areas that we've agreed, will pursue deeper collaboration, deeper cooperation. That's the work of the coming months. That's what we started today.
طبعا اختي الفاضلة كنت تسألين عن موضوع الهجمة الإعلامية. أولا يعني أحب أن أنوه بأن دولة قطر عندما نالت شرف استضافة كأس العالم كانت حازمة أمرها على أن يكون هناك عمل متعدد المجالات للوصول إلى هذا التنظيم الذي الحمد لله يعني أبهر العالم جميعا. من المؤكد أن هناك كان يعني الإصلاحات التي قامت فيها دولة قطر، هناك بعض الوسائل التي لم تأخذ هذا الشيء بعين الاعتبار، ويعني للأسف أتت بحكم مسبق بدون على الأقل يعني حتى زيارة دولة قطر والحديث مع المسؤولين فيها، ورغم أن دولة قطر كانت دائما تفتح أبوابها للجميع وتتحاور مع الجميع منذ بدأت هذه الهجمات. طبعا لا نستطيع تغيير آراء من هم يريدون فقط النيل من سمعة قطر لأهداف أو أخرى قد لا تتعلق هذه الأهداف بدولة قطر، ولكن الحمد لله أعتقد أن السواد الأعظم من الناس وخصوصا من جمهور كرة القدم عندما أتى إلى الدوحة تفاجأ بهذه الإعدادات الناجحة. ودولة قطر والشعب القطري شعب دائما مرحب ومضياف ومرحب بالجميع، ونرى الآن الفرحة في عيون الناس لاستضافة مثل هذا الحدث، ونرى فرحة الجمهور وفرحة مشاركتهم ومتعتهم لتجربة شيء جديد لم يتم تجربته مسبقا. يعني بطولة كأس العالم كانت في السنوات السابقة دائما تقام في دول غربية أو في دول أيضا متطورة جدا، ولكن أول مرة تقام في دولة في الشرق الأوسط ودولة صغيرة استطاعت حمل هذه المسؤولية وصولا إلى هذا الهدف. طبعا بالنسبة لمسألة الإصلاحات التي حدثت في السنوات الأخيرة، الكثير قد يعتقد أن كأس العالم هو السبب الرئيسي لهذه الإصلاحات، ولكن نحن نرى أن كأس العالم هو فقط محفز لهذا الشيء ومسرع للعملية، بينما هناك رؤية أعلى قيادة يعني رؤية سمو الأمير حفظه الله هي رؤية تحول لدولة قطر ومواكبة للمتغيرات التي تحدث في العالم حولنا، وهذه عملية مستمرة وغير منقطعة ولا ترتبط بحدث معين أو بمرحلة معينة، وإنما هي رحلة تستكمل. نحن نتطلع أيضا بمشاركة خبراتنا في تحضير هذه البطولة مع الولايات المتحدة والمكسيك وكندا في البطولة القادمة التي نتمنى لهم كل التوفيق والنجاح في استضافتها. ورسالتي للجميع، لوسائل الإعلام، للرأي العام بشكل عام، بأن دولة قطر ترحب بالجميع. دولة قطر أبوابها مفتوحة. دعونا يعني نركز على كرة القدم وعلى الجماهير وعلى ما يحدث في أرض الملعب، واستمتعوا بكافة التحضيرات التي قامت بها دولة قطر. ومن أراد أن يطلق أحكام مسبقة فقط لتحقيق أهداف أخرى سيكون لذلك فقط أثر مؤقت، ولكن في النهاية الحقيقة التي على الأرض هي التي تتحدث عن نفسها.
Our first question goes to Michelle Gandor.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, after resolving the immunity issue for Saudi Crown Prince in Washington, should we expect him in Washington soon? And also 2 weeks ago, President Biden said we are going to free Iran. What has the U.S. been doing in this regard? And do you have any comments on Iran announcement today that they have begun producing enriched uranium at 60% purity? And do you consider that JCPOA dead? معالي الوزير، موضوع حقوق الإنسان موضوع أساسي في الحوار الاستراتيجي بين البلدين. إلى أي مدى تشكل هذه المسألة نقطة خلاف مع الولايات المتحدة، وما هي الإصلاحات التي وعدتم بها؟
Thank you. With regard to MBS, there are no plans for him to travel to Washington. Let me say just more broadly on this question, the question of immunity. We received a request from a federal court that had litigation before it via the Justice Department to ascertain our opinion on his status. And we conveyed an opinion based on long-standing legal practice that, given his position as a head of state, head of government, or foreign minister, that he was, as a legal matter, entitled to immunity. This is a determination that we've made in dozens, hundreds of cases over the years, and in every case, we simply follow the law, and that's what we did. The opinion that we provided does not speak in any way to the merits of the case, nor the current status of the bilateral relationship. Our review of that relationship is ongoing. And again, I would note that this opinion was solicited by the court, and it has been our practice. In fact, I can't think of a case where we didn't, when asked by the court, provide an opinion. As to Iran, I can't confirm any reports about their activities. It's something that we're looking at very carefully and very closely. And what we've seen, and we've spoken of many, many times before, is that while we continue to believe that the best way to resolve the challenges posed by Iran's nuclear program are through diplomacy, Iran, for a variety of reasons, has chosen to insert extraneous issues into the effort to revive the JCPOA. And of course, meanwhile, the world is rightly focused on what's happening inside of Iran. The protests that have arisen since the killing of Mahsa Amini are something that have galvanized the world. And that is where the focus is. And of course, at the same time, the steps that Iran has taken to provide weapons, to provide drones to Russia to aid in its aggression against Ukraine are of deep concern and something that we're very focused on. We are taking steps across the board to push back against both the actions that Iran is taking to repress its own people in terms of sanctioning those who are responsible and also helping companies make sure that the Iranians have the technology that they need to continue to communicate with one another and to be connected to the outside world. We're also sanctioning entities that are involved in the provision of weapons, like drones, and looking at whatever means are possible to help the Ukrainians defend against the use of these weapons. And as we said all along, even as we've been engaged in diplomacy to try to see if we could get a mutual return to compliance with the JCPOA, we continue to exert pressure on Iran for steps that it's taking to strengthen its nuclear program in contravention of the JCPOA itself, as well as the steps that it's taking in other areas that pose significant challenges, concerns to people around the world.
بالنسبة لسؤالك أخي الفاضل بخصوص مسألة حقوق الإنسان وما تم تناوله في الحوار الاستراتيجي، أولا نحن نقدر ونثمن شراكتنا مع الولايات المتحدة والتعاون في ما بين المؤسسات الحكومية المختلفة في دولة قطر والولايات المتحدة، سواء كان في مجال حقوق الإنسان أو في المجالات الأخرى. ولكن كما ذكرت في السابق، مسألة حقوق الإنسان في دولة قطر هي مسؤولية من الدولة تجاه الشعب القطري وتجاه كل من يعيش على أرض قطر. ودولة قطر كانت قيادتنا يعني حاسمة في هذا الموضوع، وهذه الإصلاحات التي تم تبنيها هي لخدمة هذا الهدف. طبعا لا يوجد هناك، هي المسألة ليست مسألة تعهدات من الدولة لدول أخرى، وكما ذكرت نثمن الحوار والشراكة مع الولايات المتحدة، ولكن هناك برنامج عمل يتم العمل من خلاله بيننا وبين الولايات المتحدة، سواء كان لبناء القدرات بين المؤسسات المختلفة ومؤسسات إنفاذ القانون والتعلم والاستفادة من الخبرة التي توجد في الولايات المتحدة. هناك نقاط نتفق عليها وهناك نقاط نختلف عليها، لأن هذه المسائل عادة تكون وفقا لما يتناسب مع المجتمع الذي تطبق فيه. ونحن في دولة قطر كما ذكرت المسألة هي تختص بواجب ومسؤولية الحكومة تجاه شعبها وتجاه توفير البيئة التي تحمي حقوق كل من يعيش على هذه الأرض.
Our final question goes to John Hudson of the Washington Post.
Thanks very much. Mr. Secretary, fairly or unfairly, some people have called this the most politicized World Cup in history, due much in part to migrant labor and LGBT issues. As a longtime soccer fan over decades, do you agree with that historical assessment of Qatar's place among World Cups? Did that give you any pause about making this trip? Separately, what do you think of FIFA's armband edict, which is discouraging a pro-tolerance message? Minister Al-Thani, it was not long ago that your country was subject to an unprecedented blockade by GCC countries, and the U.S. government, under a different administration, was largely silent about that act of economic aggression. Was that experience of isolation what propelled Qatar to deepen its relationship with the current administration on so many fronts that have been discussed, whether it be Ukraine or Afghanistan or any other issue?
John, thank you. First, here in Qatar, as we've noted, we've launched the 5th edition of our strategic dialogue. That is work that started well before the World Cup. It's continuing during the World Cup. and it will continue after the World Cup. And in that, as we've discussed, we are working on the broad array of issues that join our countries together, as well as working through areas where we have some differences. It also happens that the World Cup is on right now, and I make no bones about having the pleasure to actually come and cheer on Team USA in its opening match, something I was really both proud to do as an American, and yes, pleased to do as a longtime soccer fan and player. But the main point is this: the work that we're doing is something that precedes this World Cup, continues during it, will continue after it. We've already talked about the many areas in which the United States and Qatar are working very closely together through the strategic dialogue to deepen cooperation, to deepen coordination. And as I've also said, human rights is one of the key pillars of our foreign policy, whether it's here in the region or, for that matter, all around the world. We've been talking about human rights, labor rights, trafficking in persons with our colleagues from Qatar for a long time, and that too is a conversation that continued today and will continue when the spotlight of the World Cup moves on. We've documented real progress. We've documented ongoing challenges, including in our annual reports. And I'd refer you, for example, to the Trafficking in Persons report that we recently put out. We appreciate the work that Qatar has done to improve labor practices, including efforts to investigate, to prosecute, to convict traffickers, staffing the specialized trafficking police unit. In 2021, under the U.S.-Qatar anti-trafficking MOU and the labor MOU that we signed, we implemented joint initiatives, and you heard the minister refer to these as well, to help Qatar build capacity, to develop the technical expertise, to raise awareness, to promote the rights of migrant workers. We're doing this through technical exchanges, we're doing it through sharing of different practices, and we're helping to actually see reforms implemented. That is critical. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is our hope and expectation that some of the progress that's been made continues and expands after the World Cup is over. I also want to commend Qatar for reopening the humanitarian care house. That will help protect and assist victims of trafficking. But as I noted, there is still considerable work to be done. It's exactly why it's so important that we have these sessions, we have these discussions, so that we could take advantage of having the strategic dialogue while the World Cup was going on, all to the better. As I said, Qatar has the spotlight on it now. You've heard the minister talk about that. But much more important is what happens when the spotlight moves on. And what I can tell you will happen is our work together to continue to address challenges with regard to rights, to labor practices, to trafficking. When it comes to the armband question, look, as I said earlier, one of the most powerful things about football, about soccer, is its potential to bring the world together. Quite literally, as it's together here in Qatar, but also figuratively, in terms of just bringing human beings together and rediscovering everything that they have in common, and how that really does fundamentally outweigh the differences that we deal with every day. That's the power of sport. That's the power of what we see going on. And the message that we heard from the Emir is hugely important, that all are welcome. And of course, it's important to make that meaningful, to put that into practice. It's always concerning from my perspective when we see any restrictions on freedom of expression. It's especially so when the expression is for diversity and for inclusion. And in my judgment, at least, no one on a football pitch should be forced to choose between supporting these values and playing for their team.
Well, thank you. Regarding actually the crisis in 2017 and the U.S. response, Well, I think that there is some confusion here because of some levels of response to what happened in 2017. And we believe that the institutional relationship between the two countries has been always the most important safeguard for this relationship. And even during the crisis and the time when we had probably some cloud in the understanding between the two countries, the institution has been always serving as a facilitator of dialogue between the two governments, making sure that everyone at all the levels, they have the right information about the cooperation and the partnership between our two countries. We've been determined about this relationship, not this year, not last year, not 10 years ago, but 50 years ago. This relationship has been progressing in a positive direction. Sometimes we have probably disagreement on maybe certain issues. We talk, we engage in dialogue, we work together in bringing our differences closer and work on the common areas. And this has been demonstrated in a lot of initiatives. As the Secretary mentioned, Al-Udeid Air Base has been the center to fight terrorism. And this base didn't start with President Biden administration or with the previous administration. This started 20 years ago. And this relationship has been nothing but only growing. Our political position has been always on different issues, on different causes, very much principled on the international law and the UN Charter. And anything, any country, any cases violating these principles, Qatar will definitely stand out and be vocal. And this is what we share with the US, a shared vision, a responsibility together to make the world a better place with a lot of other partners. And I believe that the work that we've been doing in the past a couple of years, it has been significant, recognized by both countries, that both of us, our partnership, are vital for our countries. It's vital for the US to have a partner like Qatar in this region. It's vital for us globally to have a partner like the US. And I've been saying this repeatedly, Qatar-US partnership is actually the most important international relationship that Qatar has on the international scene beyond our region. So this is something that we are committed to pursue together with my colleague Tony, and to continue pursuing this with also the future administration, whoever will come after me or after me. Thank you.
شكرا أصحاب السعادة، وبذلك نختتم هذا المؤتمر الصحفي. شكرا لكم على المشاركة.